Greetings. Welcome back to the Fluffy Jamboree Hour, or otherwise known as Black Bear News. I don't know if I messed that up. Somebody help me if I did. I think that's the alternate name for this show. The Fluffy Jamboree Hour, where we talk about happy things. As in not happy at all. Just going to cover a few things for you tonight. I got a James Howard Kunstler article for you that's kind of old, a few days old. It's got a couple things to talk about. But thank you once again for your comments and discussion and links. As always, there's plenty for me to digest and for others to discuss as well. Sorry, I'm a little distracted from the dog barking. I'm going to start with this article from The Guardian. And the headline reads, "Resource extraction responsible for half world's carbon emissions." This is from March 12th, which would be yesterday, by Jonathan Watts. Extraction also causes 80% of biodiversity loss, according to comprehensive UN study. Let's get into this. Extractive industries are responsible for half of the world's carbon emissions and more than 80% of biodiversity loss, according to the most comprehensive environmental tally undertaken of mining and farming. While this is crucial for food, fuel, and minerals, the study by UN Environment warns the increasing material weight of the world's economies is putting a more dangerous level of stress on the climate and natural life support systems than previously thought. Every single article. It's worse than we thought. It's more dangerous than we previously thought. Resources are being extracted from the planet 3 times faster than in 1970. What could go wrong? Even though the population has only doubled in that time, according to the Global Resources Outlook, which was released in Nairobi on Tuesday. Why do you think that is? Why do you think extraction is happening 3 times faster than 3 times faster than it was in 1970, as opposed to the doubling of the population? I wonder why. Could it be capitalism? Could it be increased consumption? Each year, the world consumes more than 92 billion tons of materials, biomass, mostly food, metals, fossil fuels, and minerals, and this figure is growing at the rate of 3.2% per year. That's better than GDP is going to be growing, or has been growing for the last few years. Since 1970, extraction of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas has increased from 6 billion tons to 15 billion tons. Metals have risen by 2.7% a year. Other minerals, particularly sand, gravel for concrete, have surged nearly 5-fold, from 9 billion to 44 billion tons, and biomass harvests have gone up from 9 billion to 24 billion tons. Up until 2000, this was a huge boost to the global economy. But since then, there has been a diminishing rate of return as resources become more expensive to extract and the environment costs become harder to ignore. The global economy has focused on improvements in labor productivity at the cost of material and energy productivity. This was justifiable in a world where labor was the limiting factor of production. We have moved into a world where natural resources and environmental impacts have become the limiting factor of production, and shifts are required to focus on resource productivity, says the study. The economic benefits and environmental costs are broken down by sector. Land use change, mostly for agriculture, accounts for 80% of biodiversity loss and 85% of water stress, as forests and swamps are cleared for cropland that needs irrigation. Extraction and primary processing of metals and other minerals is responsible for 20% of health impacts from air pollution and 26% of global carbon emissions. The biggest surprise to the authors was the huge climate impact of pulling materials out of the ground and preparing them for use. All the sectors combined together accounted for 53% of the world's carbon emissions, even before accounting for any fuel that is burned. The biggest surprise to the authors was the huge climate impact of pulling materials out of the ground and preparing them for use. All the sectors combined together accounted for 53% of the world's carbon emissions, 53%, even before accounting for any fuel that is burned. I would never have expected that half of climate impacts can be attributed to resource extraction and processing, says Stephanie Hellwig, one of the authors of the paper. It showed how resources are hiding behind products. By focusing on them, their tremendous impact became apparent. The paper highlights growing inequalities. In rich countries, people consume an average of 9.8 tons of resources a year, the weight of 2 elephants. This is 13 times higher than low-income groups. Much of this is unseen because huge amounts of materials are often needed for a small end product, such as a mobile phone. Isabella Teixeira, former environment minister of Brazil, said the report highlighted how rich consumer nations have exported environmental stress to poor producing countries. With this model now hitting climate and biodiversity boundaries that affect everyone on the planet, she said it was time for a change. Currently, decisions are being based on the past, but we need to base them on the future. That means leadership, and that means absolutely gutting and downsizing our consumer economy, which would probably cause the economy to crash. But that's fine. Maybe put some things in place for people to be able to survive outside of the industrial civilization that we take for granted. Let's see, where leadership could come from is difficult to see in the current political environment. The US and Brazil are slashing existing environmental regulations. China has moved ahead on renewables and pollution, but its growth is even more material intensive than developed nations. According to the report, Asia is driving the fastest demand for minerals among upper middle income countries, which now, because of their big populations, have a greater combined material weight than wealthy nations. That is indeed a huge problem. We cannot export our way of life. We cannot export our standard of living to other countries. We just cannot. But it's really difficult because people are in the process of doing just that because everybody thinks this is how we should live. This is not how we should be living. If we are talking about saving the planet, if we were talking about environmental costs and problems and mitigation, we cannot live this way. Period. End of story. End of discussion. Let's see. The author said it was essential to decouple economic growth from material consumption. Without change, they said resource demand would more than double to 190 billion tons a year. That's not going to happen. Greenhouse gases would rise by 40% and demand for land would increase by 20%. However, they said this dire scenario could be avoided if there is a faster transition toward renewables, smarter urban planning to reduce the demand for concrete, dietary changes to lower the need for grazing pastures, and cut levels of waste, currently a third of all food, and a greater focus on creating a cyclical economy that reuses more materials. They also called for a switch of taxation policies away from income and toward carbon and resource extraction. It is possible to grow in a different way with fewer side effects. No, it is not. This report is clear proof that it is possible and with higher growth, said Janez Pochenik, co-chair of International Resource Panel and former Environment Commissioner for the European Union. It's not an easy job to do, but believe me, the alternatives are much worse. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. There's not going to be, you cannot tackle climate change and have growth. You can have some growth in some areas, but overall growth, again, we either embrace the idea of degrowth and drawing down the economy or the paradigm as we know it, or it will be forced upon us. Both of those things the end result is, going to go in that direction, period. So you can either, you know, embrace it, accept it, and do it in a way so that less people get hurt and less damage is done, or you can just keep going over the cliff, and then, that's what happens. Lots of you all know that. It's, the majority of people that don't understand this and really would have a hard time acknowledging this. I'm going to move on to this article from James Howard Kunstler, A Place of Your Own. This is from March 8th, I believe. Let's see if I can actually find the date on this. I always have such a hard time. I don't know why my dog has picked right now to make all the noise. When she was so quiet all day long. This is from March 8th. And it starts, do you know your place? In these days of hysterical wokesterism, the question would surely provoke a riot of cowbell clanging Antifa cadres, fainting spells in the Congressional Black Caucus, and gravely equivocal op-eds from David Brooks of the New York Times. Yet it's a central, unacknowledged quandary of our time that so many Americans have no place and suffer terribly from it. I haven't read this at all, so just letting you know. This is a brand new article to me. Human beings need a place in the social order, in the economic order, and in actual geography in order to function optimally in a life fraught with the normal challenges and difficulties that reality presents. Let's take these places in reverse order. It's a fact that most Americans live in everyday environments that are, at best, not worth caring about, and at worst, actively punishing to human neurology. Have you taken a good look at the American landscape and townscape lately? How do you feel venturing down the 6-lane commercial boulevards lined with cartoon architecture? Either anxious or numb would be my guess, or a main street of empty storefronts, or an avenue of looming, despotic glass skyscrapers, or a vast subdivision of identical McHouses where the buffalo once roamed. Is it any wonder that Americans require more antidepressant medication than people in other lands, or that failing to find treatment, they self-medicate with alcohol, opiates, sugary snacks, and anything else that takes them out of the soul-crushing reality of their surroundings? I don't think you can overstate the damage we've done to ourselves and the sheer material arrangement of our national life. A decade ago, I sat in on many zoning board meetings called to approve new Walmarts and other chain stores around my region of upstate New York and southern Vermont. Inevitably, the companies organized a claque of locals in the meeting hall, itself a depressing low-ceiling chamber of cinder blocks and fluorescent lighting, to fill the seats and yell in support of bargain shopping. That was some bargain they got. The chain stores got approved and the main streets died, but that wasn't the end of it. The dynamic also destroyed networks that gave local citizens an economic and social place. Locally owned business people were the caretakers of the town. They took care of 2 buildings, their place of business and their home. They sat on library, school, and hospital boards and donated money to running local institutions. They employed people who lived in town, and there were consequences for treating them well or badly. There was even a time in this country when local business people wouldn't dare to put up an insulting, ugly building. A lot of this economic behavior has produced the social perversities of our time. Exterminating an entire class of local merchants has eliminated the heart of the American middle class and grotesquely concentrated the nation's wealth among corporate leviathans who comprise 1% of the population. It also eliminated the place where young people learned how to do business, preparing themselves to try ventures of their own and to make a place for themselves in the world. What is your place now? A cubicle in the marketing department of Old Navy, an aisle in the Home Depot, a desk in the diversity and inclusion office of some state university, pushing to sort the student population into racial and sexual categories because all other ways of belonging in society are gone? Or do you occupy 10 square feet of sidewalk with a tarp and a shopping cart? None of those places are liable to furnish a personal sense that life is worth living. Those of you out there still sincerely clamoring for change might start asking yourself if you have a clue about finding a place worth caring about in this country and what it might actually take to get there, including the revision of a lot of ideas in your head that you take for granted. Hint, if you're looking for it in the current political leadership, you are probably wasting your time and energy. If you're looking for it in some group identity, you may not ever discover the power in your own individual ability to make choices for yourself. And that is the end of that. Interesting article by James Howard Kunstler. There was actually a lot to discuss in this article, and I don't even know where to begin. I would have to say that definitely, you know, I'm slightly lost as to some of the points made in this article. However, indeed, like the landscape of our economy has totally changed. The landscape of how people do business and where they do business and where they actually get their livelihood from is totally and completely changed. And the landscape of identity politics and social justice have changed how people view themselves within the framework of our society. It's a huge discussion. It's an ongoing discussion that people are having, and it's an important discussion. I don't know how I feel. You know, I don't know how I feel about the term wokesterism. I get what he's saying. I don't know. This is a bigger discussion than I feel like I really want to have right now. But I hope that you all enjoyed that article. Maybe I will dissect some of these points in the near future. But people are looking for an identity. People are looking for a place in this ever turbulent world, and in the spectrum of climate change and the looming economic collapse that may be happening, or at least the looming economic downturn that looks way overdue. I don't know how long we can keep this propped up, because it is absolutely smoke and mirrors. When all of that stuff starts hitting the fan, people are really going to be wondering who they are and where they belong, and what their lives mean to them and to everyone else around them. And these are really important discussions to start having with people, I think, and to start having in any public space, whether you're talking with your friends or whether you're talking on social media. These are really difficult discussions, and there are discussions that I really would like to have daily, and I just don't even have time to have them because I'm too busy just trying to keep the wheels from falling off my own life. But when the wheels fall off of everybody's lives on some level, hopefully the discussions that we have already had and the discussions that we are willing to have will somehow lead us into a better understanding. And I don't know that I necessarily think that that's an actuality. What do you all think? I don't know. I know a lot of people on this channel pretty much feel like shit's going to happen. Shit's going to hit the fan over the fall as we go, and it's going to be every man for themselves. I don't know. I think it's going to look a little different from that. I think how we deal with it is all important and ever important. And I think how truthful we are with ourselves and with each other is going to matter a whole lot. That's just my thoughts. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.